Have you ever felt like you were holding on to something so tightly that it seemed impossible to let go, even though you knew it was hurting you? Anna was like that. On the outside, it seemed like everything was in place. A good job, friends, and a stable life. But inside, she was trapped by a constant need for approval, always trying to please, always seeking recognition. The more she tried, the more suffocated she felt. One day, while sitting alone in a cafe, Anna had a moment of clarity. She asked herself, why do I depend so much on others' opinions? What am I trying to fill inside me? It was at that moment she realized the problem wasn't what others did or said, but her attachment to her own expectations. And you? Have you ever found yourself holding on to something that no longer makes sense? Today we'll explore how letting go can bring the freedom we all seek deep down. Together, let's discover 10 Stoic teachings that can transform how you handle your emotions and help you live with more ease. The power of letting go. Have you ever stopped to think about how attachment can control your life without you realizing it? It's like handing over the remote control of your emotions to someone else. When we cling to someone or a situation, our emotions end up being shaped by others' behavior. This means our happiness, sadness, and even decisions can be influenced by factors beyond our control. But do we really need to live like this, at the mercy of external events? Letting go, contrary to what many believe, doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It's about reclaiming control of your inner peace. Imagine being able to handle life's emotional turbulence without being deeply shaken. It's about living in a way where your tranquility doesn't depend on others' actions or reactions. But how exactly do we do this? How can we start living without letting others' behavior determine our well-being? One of the most valuable Stoic teachings is that while we can't control what happens around us, we can control how we react to those situations. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from the judgment we make about them." This means we have the power to shape our responses, and by doing so, we can free ourselves from the emotional prison that attachment creates. Have you ever thought about how different your life could be if your emotions were entirely yours? The process of letting go involves recognizing that trying to control others' emotions is futile. When we give others power over our feelings, it's like being in a boat without oars, carried away by the currents of their actions and words. But letting go gives us the chance to reclaim the oars and steer our own boat. What if you could start practicing this emotional freedom right now? How would your life change? By embracing detachment, you'll discover that your inner peace is not tied to external factors. You'll be able to live more fully, with greater clarity and less anxiety. This is the power of letting go, a force that frees us from the invisible chains of emotional attachment. Now the real question is, are you ready to take back the remote control of your emotions? 2. Understanding attachment. Have you ever wondered why we are so strongly drawn to certain people or situations, even when they cause us pain? Emotional attachment is often a reflection of our ego, which pushes us to seek external validation. But why does our ego act this way? What is the root of this need to hold on to someone or something so tightly, even when we know it's harming us? These are questions few of us ask, but understanding the answers can profoundly transform your life. Stoicism teaches us that attachment is driven by our desires and fears, especially the fear of loss. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This makes us reflect on what we truly desire and why we desire it. When we're caught in attachment, we're operating from a place of lack, as if the presence of another person or situation could fill a void within us. But is this really true? Or are we just feeding an illusion? Imagine a newborn baby. It doesn't have the complexity of the ego and lives simply, free from the emotional burdens we accumulate over time. As we age, our ego takes control, creating a web of desires, fears, and attachments that cloud our vision of what truly matters. But what if we could return to that simplicity? What if we could identify what is truly necessary and let go of what only feeds our ego? Recognizing that attachment comes from the ego is the first step to starting the process of letting go. Attachment to another person or situation often stems from a need for validation, fear of being alone, or fear of losing something we believe is essential for our happiness. But what would happen if we could find that validation within ourselves, without relying on external sources? This is the true path to emotional freedom. The practice of letting go helps us return to our essence, where self-love and self-acceptance replace fear and need. When we can detach, we discover that happiness doesn't depend on anyone else but ourselves. Are you ready to start exploring this path of self-discovery and detachment? The illusion of control. How many times have you believed that if you could do everything perfectly, you could control others' actions and emotions? This is a common mistake many of us make, but what's really behind this attempt at control? The illusion of control traps us into thinking that we somehow have power over how others behave or react. But do we really have that control? Stoicism teaches us that most of what happens in our lives is beyond our control. We constantly try to predict and manipulate others' behavior to ensure we aren't disappointed or hurt. But in reality, we cannot control how others act. And this is one of the biggest misconceptions that fuels emotional attachment. If the only thing you could control was your reaction, how would that change the way you face your emotions? Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters. This principle is the foundation for dismantling the illusion of control. When we try to control others' behavior, we end up frustrated, anxious, and often stuck in endless cycles of suffering. By recognizing that we have no power over others but only over ourselves, we begin to free ourselves from this burden. This may sound frightening at first, but it's profoundly liberating. True emotional freedom comes from accepting that we can't control what others do, say, or think, but we can always control how we respond to those situations. By focusing on our reaction instead of trying to control the external, we begin to build an inner fortress that can't be shaken by others' actions. What would you do if you could truly embrace this idea in your life? Stoicism teaches us that true power lies within us, and by accepting the limits of our control, we find peace. The moment we stop trying to manipulate what's beyond our reach, we make room for something much more valuable: inner serenity. Is it time for you to break free from this illusion and focus on what you can truly control? Fourth, letting go in practice. Knowing that detachment is important is one step, but how do we apply it in real life? Often we're fully aware that we're holding on to something that's harming us, but the idea of letting go seems terrifying. It's like holding onto a rope that's hurting your hands, but the fear of what will happen if you let go is greater than the pain. Have you ever found yourself in this situation? Knowing you need to let go but feeling paralyzed by fear? The first step to putting detachment into practice is recognizing what's holding you back. What are you still holding on to that's actually limiting your happiness? It could be a relationship, a memory from the past, or even an unattainable ideal. When we identify these attachments, we can start releasing them little by little. This doesn't mean ignoring your emotions, but finding healthy ways to deal with them without letting them govern your life. A practical method of detachment is to focus on what you can control. This includes your actions, your thoughts, and how you choose to respond to situations. We can't control what others do, but we can choose how we react. What would happen if you began to focus only on what's within your control? Would you feel lighter, less pressured? Letting go is about taking small steps in the right direction, each one bringing you closer to emotional freedom. Additionally, engaging in activities that bring you purpose and satisfaction is a powerful way to cultivate detachment. When you're invested in something that truly matters to you, whether it's a hobby, work, or a personal cause, attachment to other situations starts to lose its grip. Have you ever noticed that when you're engaged in something meaningful, external worries seem smaller? That's because your attention is focused on what you can control, and that generates a deep sense of peace. In the end, detachment is about recognizing that you are enough, regardless of what happens around you. This can be difficult to accept at first, But with practice, you'll discover that true happiness comes from within. So, what are you ready to let go of today to create more space for your inner peace? Path to happiness. Have you noticed that often happiness seems like something distant, always tied to a person or situation? It seems like if you had that, or that person, then you'd be truly happy. But is true happiness something that comes from the outside, or is it already within you, waiting to be discovered? This is one of the deepest questions Stoicism invites us to reflect on. What makes Stoicism so powerful is the recognition that happiness doesn't depend on external factors. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This makes us think about how often we chase things or people believing they will bring us happiness, when in fact, inner peace is already within our reach. What if you could stop seeking outside and start cultivating that happiness from within? The process of detachment is essentially a return to your own essence. When you realize that your happiness doesn't depend on anyone else, life becomes lighter. This doesn't mean you distance yourself from the people or things you love, but rather that your happiness isn't tied to them. Imagine how freeing it would be to live knowing that your inner peace is unshakable, no matter the external circumstances. This path to happiness isn't about rejecting connections or relationships, but about embracing them in a healthier and more balanced way. When you detach from the idea that your happiness depends on someone else, you start to relate in a more genuine and authentic way. What would happen if you could love without attachment, without expecting the other to fill a void inside you? True happiness lies in living according to your own values, in aligning with your inner essence. By practicing detachment, you discover that the peace and happiness you seek have always been inside you. Is it time for you to stop searching outside and start nurturing what's already within you? 6. Embracing the present moment. How many times have you caught yourself thinking about the past, dwelling on something that's already happened, or worrying about the future, imagining scenarios that may never come true? This tendency to live outside the present moment is one of the biggest causes of anxiety and stress. But what if you could really live in the now, without the shadows of the past or the uncertainties of the future weighing on your shoulders? What would change in your life if you could fully embrace the present moment? Stoic philosophy teaches us that the present moment is all we truly have. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest exponents of Stoicism, reminds us, "Confine yourself to the present." This is one of the most profound lessons we can learn because when we live in the present, we stop being prisoners of painful memories or fears of what's to come. But how do we do this in practice? How can we start living here and now more consciously and fully? One effective way to start living in the present is by practicing mindfulness. This means paying intentional attention to what's happening around and within you right now, without judgment. For example, have you ever caught yourself eating without even noticing the taste of the food? Or talking to someone while your mind wandered elsewhere? When we practice mindfulness, we learn to be present in every little detail, whether it's the taste of food, the sound of a conversation, or the simple sensation of breathing. The practice of mindfulness may seem simple, but it's incredibly powerful. By training your mind to focus on the present, you begin to realize that many of your worries and anxieties stem from things beyond your control, past or future events. And when you disconnect from those worries, something magical happens. You start to experience a deep sense of peace and contentment. How would your life be if you could, little by little, start living more in the now? In addition to practicing mindfulness, another way to embrace the present is to cultivate gratitude for what you have now. Often we become so focused on what's missing in our lives that we forget to value what we already have. Think of 3 things you're grateful for right now. By doing this, you're bringing your mind back to the present, to the good things already around you. The present is the only moment that truly exists, and it's where you can find your true peace. 7. Reframing your thoughts. Have you noticed how your thoughts shape your emotions? Often we're prisoners of negative thought patterns that keep us trapped in emotional attachments. But what if you could change the way you think? What if you could reprogram your mind to see situations in a more positive and balanced way? The power of reframing your thoughts is one of the most effective tools in the process of emotional detachment, and it starts with the simple but powerful practice of questioning your beliefs. The first step in reframing your thoughts is to identify the ones that are holding you back. How many times have you caught yourself thinking something like, "I can't live without this person," or "My happiness depends on what happens with this relationship"? These thoughts are based on limiting beliefs that create a cycle of emotional dependence. But are these beliefs really true? Does your happiness really lie outside your control? Once you recognize these thoughts, the next step is to question them. Ask yourself, is this true? Or, what evidence do I have to support this belief? Often you'll discover that these thoughts aren't based on facts but on fears and insecurities. By challenging these beliefs, you start to weaken the power they have over your emotions. What if you could start replacing these negative thoughts with more realistic and positive ones? How would that change your emotional life? Replacing negative thoughts with more empowering beliefs is at the heart of reframing. For example, instead of thinking, "I'll never find someone like this person," you can start thinking, "There are many opportunities for love and connection in my future." This mindset shift may seem subtle, but it has the power to completely transform your way of seeing the world and your relationships. When you change your way of thinking, you also change your way of feeling. Furthermore, reinforcing this new way of thinking requires daily practice. An effective strategy is to use positive affirmations. Write down thoughts that reflect a healthier perspective and read them daily. Over time, these affirmations become part of your thought pattern, helping you build a more resilient and balanced mindset. What would happen if you affirmed your own worth and your ability to be happy regardless of external circumstances every day? 8. Setting healthy boundaries. Have you ever felt drained from always saying yes when you really wanted to say no? Or maybe you found yourself emotionally involved in situations that you knew weren't healthy for you, but you stayed out of fear of hurting others. This is a clear sign that you need to set healthy boundaries. But how do you do that effectively without seeming selfish or insensitive? Boundaries are essential to protect your emotional well-being, and learning to set them can be the key to your emotional freedom. Boundaries are essentially invisible lines that define what's acceptable or not in your interactions with others. When you set boundaries, you're telling the world that you value your inner peace and aren't willing to sacrifice it for external expectations. But setting boundaries can be challenging, especially if you fear displeasing others. However, have you ever thought about the impact that not setting these boundaries has on you? When you don't set clear boundaries, you end up emotionally drained, trying to please everyone but yourself. It's like trying to fill everyone else's cup while your own cup remains empty. But here's the secret. Setting boundaries isn't an act of selfishness, it's an act of self-care. By setting healthy boundaries, you're actually creating healthier, more balanced relationships based on mutual respect. One effective way to start setting boundaries is to identify what you're willing to accept and what you're not. This includes setting limits on your time, energy, and emotions. Once you're clear about your own boundaries, the next step is to communicate them clearly and firmly. It may be difficult at first, but the more you practice, the more natural it will become. Imagine what it would be like to live without the burden of feeling obligated to always say yes to everything. Setting and maintaining these boundaries will strengthen your self-esteem and confidence. When people see that you respect your own boundaries, they'll also learn to respect them. And eventually, you'll realize that the relationships that survive these boundaries are the ones truly worth keeping. Healthy boundaries don't push people away. They help build more genuine and lasting connections. So, what are you waiting for to start drawing yours? 9. Taking care of yourself. When was the last time you did something for yourself without feeling guilty or thinking about others' needs? In a world that often values doing for others, self-care can be seen as a luxury, but it's actually a necessity. To detach emotionally and build a balanced life, taking care of yourself is essential. But how do you do that effectively without feeling like you're being selfish? Self-care is, in fact, the foundation for all your relationships and your emotional health. The philosopher Seneca reminds us, "A sound mind and a sound body is a short but complete description of a happy state in this world." Taking care of yourself starts with the most basic things, like your physical body. Regular exercise, eating well, and getting enough sleep are the foundations of a clear and balanced mind. Have you noticed how, when your body is well, your emotions also seem more stable? That's the power of physical self-care. In addition to the body, taking care of your mind is also crucial. Practices like meditation and mindfulness can help calm your mind and bring clarity to your thoughts. If your mind is constantly filled with worries, stress, and negativity, it's hard to detach emotionally. But by practicing mental self-care, you create space to breathe, reflect, and find solutions in a more serene way. What impact could meditation or simply deep breathing have on your life today? Self-care also involves doing things that bring you joy and satisfaction. Hobbies, leisure moments, and even small daily pleasures are ways of taking care of yourself. When you take time to do something you love, without rush or guilt, you're nurturing your soul. And this, in turn, helps you become less dependent on external validation to feel complete. What do you enjoy doing that you could include more of in your daily routine? Ultimately, taking care of yourself is an act of self-love. When you prioritize your well-being, you strengthen yourself to face life's challenges with greater resilience. And the best part? By taking care of yourself, you also care for those around you because you become a more balanced and happy version of yourself. How can you start practicing self-care today? 10. Practicing gratitude. Have you noticed how, when you focus on what you don't have, it seems increasingly harder to let go? The feeling of scarcity fuels emotional attachment, making us believe we need something or someone to be happy. But what if you could change that mindset? The practice of gratitude is a powerful tool that can help you break free from this cycle of emotional dependence. The simple act of acknowledging the good things you already have can completely transform your perspective. Gratitude teaches us to value what is present in our lives now, rather than focusing on what's absent. As Epictetus reminds us, do not spoil what you have by desiring what you have not. When we practice gratitude, we begin to realize that many of the things we worry about are actually irrelevant to our happiness. What if you started to value the little things in life more? How would that change the way you see the world? Practicing gratitude is more than just saying, "Thank you." It's about creating a daily habit of acknowledging the good things, big and small, that are already present. It could be as simple as a sunny day, a friend's support, or even a warm cup of coffee in the morning. Each time you do this, you're training your mind to focus on what's positive, and that creates a powerful effect on your emotions. How about starting right now by thinking of 3 things you're grateful for today? This exercise in gratitude has a profound impact on how you relate to others and yourself. When you recognize what you already have, the attachment to what you think you need begins to lose its strength. What once seemed essential for your happiness now becomes clearer and less anxiety-inducing. Gratitude teaches us that we are already complete, and instead of constantly chasing what's missing, we can delight in what's already here. Over time, the practice of gratitude creates a sense of abundance in your life. You begin to realize there's much to be thankful for, and with that, the fear of loss diminishes. When you're grateful for what you have, emotional detachment becomes a natural consequence. How would your life change if you started practicing gratitude every day? In conclusion, it's important to remember that the path to emotional detachment doesn't happen overnight. But every step you take toward this inner freedom makes all the difference. By applying the Stoic teachings we've discussed, you'll realize that your peace of mind depends less on what happens around you and more on how you choose to respond to those situations. Detachment isn't about distancing yourself from the world, but about getting closer to yourself with more clarity and balance. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to like the video, share it with anyone who might benefit from these reflections, and subscribe to the channel to continue following more Stoic teachings. Your participation is essential for us to continue on this journey of self-knowledge and transformation together. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.